Oh my goodness.
Recently I've been attempting to play with a less than stable internet connection, and during that time I've noticed a few weird things about the way that Dead by Daylight seems to handle lag. Just before we start, I want to be clear that in these videos I didn't realise that my connection was going to be so poor before playing the game. What was happening is that my connection would be totally fine for one game and then the next game completely mess up. I do not condone in the slightest actually attempting to play the game with lag. It's a joyless experience for you and the other people that you're playing with, so maybe don't do that. So the first and perhaps most obvious thing that you'll notice when you have lag is the way that players continue to move in the direction they were previously going before your connection cut out. And the reason for this is so that the server needs to send less frame-by-frame information for player movement. By providing direction and speed information, it allows the client to predict where the player is going to move, and then when it sends the update with their precise location, they should already be in that spot. This is a fairly common method of lag compensation. One thing I noticed about this, however, is that scratch marks are all calculated client-side. See this clip where the Nia walks towards that tree? She never actually went there, but when I walk past there later, the scratch marks are still there.
What is going on, man? Yeah, that makes sense. Oh my god, Nia!
This would be totally fine except for the fact that hit detection seems to be done on the killer's side, which means that if a player isn't actually in the position that the killer thinks they're in and he hits them, that still counts as an injury. To illustrate how bad that is, look at where I hit this lorry, and then look at where she actually is when my connection catches up.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then the exact same thing happens to this Nia. How fun.
Didn't know you could teleport? How likely does one have to be? Yeah.
So those are some examples of how lag compensation tries to make the game better for killers, but when the connection isn't stable it becomes really unfair. Here's a similar thing but from a survivor's perspective. This game was played about a week before the one I just showed you. I'm stuck. Oh, there we go.
Tom, Jack, where are you?
I'm on a gen. I can't really explain.
So it appears that some element of movement is sent to the server and then verified by the server, probably to stop speed hacking, but in this instance when my connection was cutting out, I just couldn't move at all. This didn't happen to me at any other point during the game, so it's very likely that this only happened because the server thought I was stuck inside the hook object and shouldn't be able to move.
Jesus.
Tom, you just teleported behind him.
Yeah, you're teleporting all over the place.
It's not my fault. Probably one of the biggest frustrations of trying to play a game with bad internet is that you teleport all over the place. Now my assumption was that only I could see this, that I was moving and then the server was correcting my position over on the client. But the fact that my squaddies saw me teleport makes me think it's something completely different.
Tom, are you there? What the hell? You ran past me!
So from that we know that the player lag movement compensation is not only when you have a bad connection, but when one of your teammates has a bad connection. It uses their last distance and direction and speed to figure out where they were trying to go, and just continues down that path until it receives more data from them. Obviously actions such as repairing a generator or unhooking someone has to be run by the server first, but it seems like minute by minute actions such as pulling down pallets or using dead hard is also run by the server before it's displayed on the client. This explains why there are sometimes impossible situations where you stun a killer but he's still able to down you. It seems like it amalgamates the data from both the survivor and the killer, and then it does both of those rather than favouring a single action based on a timestamp. I want to point out here that the player movement compensation thing was unfair on survivors in the last game, but in this game it's unfair on the killer, where although ultimately he does kill me, and there's very little I can do about that, he can't really chase me either, because I'm jumping about all over the place. So ultimately, I don't think that lag compensation is necessarily bad in Dead by Daylight. For regular gameplay, it's totally fine, and quite frankly, most of this stuff you'll barely ever notice. But there are certainly a few obvious things that could be fixed or improved upon. The question is whether these things are actually fixable, or if they're so baked into a spaghetti code engine that there isn't actually an easy solution. So for now, all we can do is complain on the forums about lag.